go into this subject then of maintaining our ground through life's challenges. And we're all going to experience life challenges. It doesn't matter where you are on your life journey or how aware you are, how spiritually developed you are. Life is going to keep happening. It's going to throw challenging situations at us. It's going to throw, stressful anxiety and anxiety at us at times. And that really is, especially in our modern culture, it's kind of a symptom, I think. You only have to turn on the news for a minute or, scroll through the media and you can feel that kind of building up in the system. There's so much, if we want to look at that, to get kind of anxious about. And I think most of the world is in a place of sort of fight or flight as a result of that. Our lives are so busy. We're so inundated with information. We're constantly distracted. The result, most people, I think, in the world, especially in the Western world, are living from this place of heightened anxiety, fight or flight. And so what does it mean? What does it mean to be grounded? If we're living from that place, we're living in our parts, or you could say, if you haven't encountered that term before, you could say you're living in your trauma, really, your past trauma. And so if we're living from this place of unconscious stress and anxiety, we're just repeating the same patterns all the time. We're having the same situations crop up in our lives all the time because our lives are being powered by this underlying stress and anxiety. Very difficult to make any real progress or to create a life of well-being and balance. We're acting from these parts the whole time. And so if we talk about grounding or finding our ground, it really is about pausing, shifting our energy. And I think the main way we're going to talk about today is going inward into the felt sense, connecting with others. But before I go into my own experience, the reason I thought Luke would be great today is because I know he's been through something quite recently, which is pretty profound in a relationship. And I won't say any more. I'll let you kind of go into this one, Luke, and why this particular work that we help people with today was so powerful in your own life in that situation.
Yeah, thanks. So it's a very interesting topic, isn't it? Being grounded, and I think it's important to sort of start off by highlighting, that it's being grounded, not doing grounded, or if anything, if I had to come up with like a simple definition, in my experience, I would say that being grounded is actually it's the absence of doing things because of a thought. It's the absence of taking action to try to fix a situation, to try to change the outcome of a situation. So, which sounds, can sound pretty ludicrous actually if you're not familiar with this kind of work, and you come from the more sort of traditional school of logic, which I'm from, definitely from, which is like, here's a problem, how can we best fix it? Let's go out there and find all this information and just apply a lot of effort to try to, really bring ourselves out of our problem. And so the particular situation that I went through was that my girlfriend wanted to break up with me, and we just moved in together. And from my perspective, the relationship was going really well. And so I was quite surprised by this, but there were definitely signs leading up to this that things weren't right. And rather than talking about what was going on in the relationship, it just kind of, the Titanic just sort of went into the iceberg and started sinking without any signal, right? So, but what was interesting was that, normally, even my reaction in that situation was to go into sort of like a fuck you then approach. Sorry if you mind my language.
But, you swear all you want.
Yeah. No kids around today.
No, not today.
So, particularly in like a relationship environment where, it's very highly charged, it's very sensitive. If the other person hurts you, that hurt is amplified quite a lot. Relationships for a lot of people are the source of a lot of trauma, because you let your guard down, you let someone get close to you, and then there's a huge amount of trust. If someone breaks that trust, that creates then a defensive part or pattern which never wants to feel that way again. And so you you change your behavior in response to that. For me, when this happened, I could sort of sense as it came up to the moment that it was happening, and rather than trying to do anything to change it, I just took a lot of time and I sat with different people in meditation. So that's where I would say that's the grounding. It's, rather than going, oh my God, this thing is happening, I don't want it to happen, it actually really hurts. And I'm going to go off and, just distract myself with whatever it is. It could be going out with your mates and forgetting about it. It can be even like exercising or working or just doing anything to avoid the problem until it happens. And then when the problem happens, then going into a tailspin about it. And actually, through that process of sitting there and really just getting present to how it felt and allowing myself to experience that pain, like not avoiding the pain, but actually sitting there and going, yeah, this really hurts, but I'm just going to keep creating space. Not, not talking anything like crazy here, like I wasn't there for like hours a day. This is just little 10, 15-minute calls, space throughout the day. That is not common way to approach these kind of problems in our society.
Yes.
I hadn't really ever come across that before, and would have normally told you that is like a waste of time if you're not doing anything. So the problem is not there.
Oh yeah.
But funnily enough, what actually came out of that was that because I wasn't then flying off the handle and retaliating and getting angry. I mean, I was getting a bit upset and angry, but not as much as I could have been. That actually created the space for the conversation that needed to happen a long time before that to come up, because in the absence of retaliation and anger, it makes the other person feel much more secure then in having that reasonable conversation with you, which you wouldn't be able to have if you were highly charged and in defense mode. And I could go on about that for a long time, but I guess that's probably enough of a gives the idea.
Well, then the result of that, leading on from that, was this kind of the relationship coming back together, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To where you are today,
and it's we haven't looked back. If anything, we're close together now. We just got a puppy together. It really
this was
like 3 months ago. This happened, I guess. So
right, yeah, and this is it. I mean, had you not taken that time to feel into your present moment, felt experience, and you had then reacted from the part. The thing is, it's knowing when you're in part. I think a lot of the art that I've discovered over the sort of last couple of years in particular, realizing, okay, I'm in a part, in a trauma here. I've kind of got lost. I've lost my ground or my awareness of what's happening. I'm not the observer of my internal experience anymore. I've kind of become the part, or I've become the trauma, and then before you know it, you've acted in a way that is out of alignment. You've done more harm than good, and then when you find that ground again, it's too late. You've already acted out those parts. But I guess for a period of doing this work over a long period of time, you realize quicker, okay, I'm in a part here, I need to find support. And I think there is a difference there. What you talked about there is you can do this on your own, which is great. And obviously people in this group most will have a meditation practice of some kind. There's a difference, I think, when you've got support, that is people on the path with you who you can reach out to and sit with. Because when you sit on your own in meditation, a lot of the time you are kind of sat there with your own parts, your own traumas, you're feeling through them. But when you've got somebody sat with you in presence, your system comes to balance, comes to ground much easier. It kind of templates their own energy. And so you're able to kind of find your own ground much easier. That's been my experience.
Yeah, definitely. I'd second that as well. It's, the individual practice is great. And, it's almost like sharpening your axe, right? Like the individual practice, you can really just develop that muscle, that ability to slow down, and just create space for, things that are troubling you and creating high levels of emotion in your system, which, driving you to take action which is not necessarily in your best interest. That, you know, for me was the doorway was doing individual meditation practice that allowed me to slow down enough to realize that my whole life had been built upon this like identity that wasn't really me, but I just had sort of formed it, and you become attached to it, and you can't see, you know, all your decisions are being made based on the fact like, well, that's the decision I already made yesterday, so I have to keep making that decision today, because otherwise it means that all my decisions in the past were wrong, or something like that.
Yes.
Like the ego is a very weird and wonderful thing in that sense, but certainly in terms of the healing work and turning that energy into something productive and really living your best life, and you know, all those other benefits that can come from doing this work, it's so much more powerful when you have people to support you. And like you said, that you almost like when a child learns to walk, you don't tell the child how to walk, they just
intuitively know,
mirror intuitively how you do it. And the same with many other things, many other examples of that, in learning in general. You know, we learn things intuitively. You might sit there reading something and absorbing some information, but ultimately when you get it, something unconscious switches that learns it. And the same thing can happen when you're with somebody else. You can learn, if they've already learned something, you can learn from them, and they can even still learn from you. Even if you haven't necessarily got that, you might have something else that they can benefit from. So it's always a two-way thing. It's never like a one-way, I have experience and you don't, so you're going to now learn from me. We can always both benefit from sitting together.
Yes, because which is what I try to explain to people. We're used to things happening, making progress, you know, with the mind and thinking about it. And, you know, I think for a lot of us, it's like that's the only way we can solve things. But it's a real switch of consciousness, or a real leap of faith to sit essentially doing nothing. I mean, what you're doing is you're feeling into your present moment felt experience, and then allowing your body to do all the work. There's so much happening when we sit with each other in presence. So we just did this before we went live today, just finding our own ground, you know, feeling into what parts are active at the time. From my perspective, we don't know what's happening, but we know that the body is taking over, and that intuitive intelligence, which is far greater than any kind of mental intelligence we've got, is doing all the work. You know, it's taking energy from the field we create together to heal itself. You know, we've all got these mirror neurons. I'm taking aspects of your energy that I need to heal myself. You're doing vice versa. I mean, we don't know. There's no way of knowing totally what is going on in that space, but you know how you feel afterwards, which is completely different. And over a long period of doing this work, connecting regularly with people in presence, even just a short period of time every day, life begins to transform. You know, that feeling of support and well-being you get when you connect with someone on that level, the way I would describe it is it starts to overflow into everyday life. And all of a sudden, I'm not saying I always am experiencing peace and well-being, but for me, there's like an underlying sense of that support and well-being that is always there in the background in day-to-day life. So I can find that much easier for me to find my ground, and much quicker for me to realize when I've slipped into a part. You know, whereas in the past, I could spend a whole day in a part, ruminating, thinking things over, and being kind of, you know, creating an argument in my mind with someone, whatever it might be. It's like, oh, okay, I'm in a part. Let me find my ground. Let me reach out for support. But it's not an easy thing to do, especially that part of reaching out for support from someone. That's a real challenge. Was for myself. I know for a lot of people I work with now. Was that your experience as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, I tell some of my clients sometimes that, you know, even when we're on like the group meditation calls in the program that we've both been part of, even as a coach, when they say, right, we're going to do a breakout room now, and we're going to put you in a room with a random person you may or may not have met before, I'm there like, oh no, I don't want to speak to that.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
There's just a little bit that still always pops up, and then, you know, you get there and you actually have a great time, and it's never as bad as you think. But there's definitely like a sense of security of or insecurity with the unknown that prevents us from wanting to push out of our comfort zone and do something new or different to the way we've done it before, because we don't know what the outcome will be. And it's funny because it sort of is the thing that holds us back ultimately. There was I don't know if you ever saw that movie, The Croods, where there are a bunch of cavemen.
Yes, my daughter, I've seen bits of it. My daughter,
they have this thing where they hate new things because new things are dangerous. So whenever someone says the word something new, they all like get out rocks and get ready to fight, and then in the end, what they realize is that what they want is actually out there, and there's the whole story. But I definitely feel like my life was probably a bit like that.
It is. I had a podcast on this recently, this idea of if you want to grow, which really is what we're here for, if you think about it, or grow and heal in this life, then it is about finding your limits. You could say that area of discomfort and leaning into it. Very difficult to do without, facing this stuff and feeling into it. I think there's a point where if something is uncomfortable and unknown, a lot of the time, when we're in our heads, we're in our minds, we will retreat back to safety. It's just like, oh, that's frightening. The mind comes up with a series of frightening future possibilities to keep you alive, essentially keep you where you are, because that's what its main function is. And so you naturally retreat. But if you find the edge of your comfort zone, I mean, I can think of multiple times with this. For me, probably the biggest example of this for me was going to Peru and drinking ayahuasca for 10 days. Mind was absolutely terrified. My wife was terrified. I mean, my mind was just saying, don't do it. It's an unnecessary risk. But if you are able to drop in, especially with others, as I do now, and feel into that discomfort, that fear, you can lean into it and then move beyond the terror that's in the mind of these new experiences. If we're really going to step into our growth and our healing in this lifetime, we really do have to explore the limits of what is comfortable, don't we?
Yeah, it's on some level, I think most people would agree that there is like an intrinsic need as a human to be growing and changing and to have new experiences. To be stagnant, there's anything you've ever wanted in your life, like anything you've really wanted that you didn't have at the beginning, and then once you've got it, over time, when you first get that thing, which could be a promotion or a relationship or a house or a car, anything sort of material, you really want that thing, and you kind of go out of your way to get that thing. And then once you've got that thing, it's amazing. And then it rapidly tails off, and then you just take that thing for granted and you're starting something new.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that the way that our society kind of is structured is a lot of people do get stuck because, you get committed by all sorts of different things, financially and, in terms of like what your profession is and all these different things, you're sort of committed by the decisions you've made in the past. But, the purpose of life is not to sort of avoid all the dangers so that you can make it safely to die at old age.
Safely to death. Yeah.
Make it safely to death. There's something that sort of inspires us at a deep level. And yeah, I think it's important to ask yourself, like, why is that? And maybe not why so much as, what is it that I truly desire? Not what people tell me I should want, not what I need to be safe in terms of like having security so that I can be sure that I'm not going to, have to experience any pain in the next few years. Because really, a lot of experiences that are growth experiences do, like you said, put you on that very edge of pain and pleasure, but they complement each other when they're in a good balance. And
that's how it's worthwhile. That's how I always think. Look, if I'm working with plant medicine. I've got a ceremony booked. Remember to be in a few weeks' time, and I can already feel the discomfort the fear that's coming up around it. If you haven't worked with plant medicine, then it's probably the biggest test that you can put yourself through, because you literally are, losing control of your experience in a sense. From, well, the mind is, you could say, and your only choice really is to surrender into it. It's a great teacher in terms of surrender. If you fight, then you're going to have a very challenging experience. But if you can surrender and observe, then you get what you need from the experience. Forgot where I was going with that now.
Yeah, so we've kind of wandered away.
Oh yes, the fear that comes up. Sorry, the fear that comes up. So I know, because there's a lot of fear around the idea of doing it, it's getting closer, that this is going to be a worthwhile experience. Because it is going to challenge me. I am meeting the edge of my comfort zone, and I know that by going through it, I'm going to expand what is my known experience and what is comfortable to me. If I didn't have that, if I was going into experience and there was no fear, then it's probably not going to be that beneficial for me in the long term.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Actually, I've just had that similar thing recently. I was telling you, I think before we started this, that we just got a puppy recently, and literally just 2 weeks ago, and we prepared ourselves really well. We read this great book and took an online course in dog training, and prepared the flat. You have to puppy-proof your flat because they are going to chew on stuff, and at least everything we read said they're going to be prepared. They're going to chew on stuff, so you have to give them things they can chew on, because they have such bad teething problems, and you need to remove stuff that you really don't want to be torn apart, basically, at least until they get to a certain age, and all this. But I guess at some point maybe they didn't quite emphasize just how much the dog would bite you.
Yeah.
You probably won't be able to see, but I've got little scrapes and cuts all up my arm. And I thought we've prepared really well. We've got all these great chew toys, and we've got all these treats, and we've learned how to train them to sit and all this stuff. But at the beginning, they're just basically like a small child, and you can't necessarily reason with them. And while we have trained him a bit already, and he is learning actually really quickly, it's such a big adjustment to try to get another creature to understand what our sort of human world looks like, all the conditioning that we have in terms of not breaking stuff. A dog almost has the opposite needs. It wants to dig holes and tear things apart because it's practicing its survival skills, so that if it gets stuck in the wild, it can rip things apart like animals and dig holes to stay warm in the winter. But when that's your flat that it's practicing on and your arm, it's not great. And so that kicked up some parts for me. That I was angry because I was I did all the preparation, but they didn't really prepare me for what it was actually going to be like. Right. But after reflecting on it, what I came back with after sitting with it the last few days is well, that's just a part for me to work with. The fact that the experience is showing that up. And this is something that, my mentors told me a lot at the beginning of the work, but I never really saw. And now I think it is, like you said, over time, gradually getting to that point where when something when something comes up that's uncomfortable, that's painful, that makes you have fear and strong emotions like anger and stuff like that, there is, you still get hooked by that a little bit. Initially you just go off into that pattern, but very quickly you go, hang on, this isn't like me, this is not how I normally am. And rather than saying that, but it's because of that other person, it's because of that other thing, I can blame it on that, which is what the conditioned mind is always wanting to do. It's wanting to say, but I'm justified, and it makes sense. And so then then you're just tied into the delusion of reality. But instead, if you go, well, this is an opportunity for growth, because if I can actually resolve that part in me that is so desperate for control or whatever it might be, that it gets angry when it doesn't have complete control and it doesn't have complete certainty over the situation, then that will probably set me up to do other things which I don't even know about yet because they haven't happened, but in this point in my life may come in very, very useful.
I love that. That's exactly, I think something else that I've just literally been dealing with this week, a part that's come up. Initially it was around finances, money. There's a lot of fear, particularly in the UK at the moment, around this cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
And from a position where, I'm financially pretty comfortable, but all of a sudden, it's like the energy in the field has changed a bit. I'm hearing so many people that are anxious around money at the moment. And I've started to pick up on that. I've started to kind of, I can't spend on this, I can't spend on that. And when we've had a bill come in for something in the house, it's been like, there's been a part in there that's kind of constricted. I've had to kind of deal with this stuff. But like you said, it's actually a blessing. If we can look at these external things that trigger us as a blessing, because what that does is highlight a part of myself that feels unsafe, insecure. And if then I do the inner work, like we've been talking about, reaching out for support, I can process that part, and it's like another layer of the onion is released. And on the other side of it is more well-being, more connection, more awareness, more balance. So, yeah, the realization that our external triggers are actually helping us, to pointing out parts of ourselves that are out of alignment. You can have gratitude for all of these challenges that life throws at you, all these external triggers. That's a big step, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, actually, because I was thinking about this. This came through for me in our mini that we had before, that when you see sort of children, they don't really have all that conditioning. They just do whatever it is that their mind latches onto in that moment, right?
Yeah.
They're uninhibited by all those social norms and etiquettes and essentially patterns and conditioning. And then over their life, over your lifetime, you start to get, think bad things happen when you do certain things, good things happen when you do other things. You start to form that personality, that identity, and all these patterns that keep you in that loop. So, you at some point in time you had some bad experience, so then you'll now have a behavior that you do which stops you from ever going into that kind of that area of your life again. It will keep you away from it, even unconsciously. You might not be consciously making that decision, but you're just going to not want to go anywhere near those things that made you feel uncomfortable, and you're going to want to try to cling on to the things that did make you feel good, did make you comfortable. So you hit this point where you've got so many of these, like thousands of patterns, that essentially you've just sort of cocooned yourself in like a cotton wool bud. And that comes back to what we were saying earlier about craving to have new experiences and needing to have growth in your life. Well, you can't really have growth when you have so many of these mechanisms and behaviors, patterns that you've acquired unconsciously, because they're literally keeping you in the tiniest possible area so that you don't touch any of those bad things and trying to sort of cling on to those good things. But by undoing those patterns, and when I say undoing, really what we're talking about here is being grounded. It's not doing the pattern, like recognizing the pattern and stopping doing things and just sitting and just creating space and just allowing awareness to learn whatever it needs by being present. Then once you remove that blockage, that is what allows you to actually go out and have those new experiences and
find feeling of being safe. I mean, I actually do have a child, so when you talk about having a puppy who's pointing stuff out to you, having a 4-year-old, I mean, she's better than she was when she was 3, but it's a constant teaching. I'm sure people watching this on the replay later will be able to relate to this. They seem to know exactly what parts to press on in order to essentially gain control of the situation. That seems to be a common theme with my daughter. She's always looking to a bit of a power struggle going on. And she learns, we're living together all the time, what buttons to press, how to trigger certain things so that she gets what she wants, and she can often play me and my wife off against each other. Very intelligent, 4-year-olds. But I can be grateful for that, and I'm so grateful for this work because, she has this, what we call an aggressive pattern. So when she feels out of control, she's able to summon this intense energy and just kind of explode it out as anger. So in the past, when I'm hit by an energy like that, like anger, I might have picked up on that and responded in a similar way, responded in an angry way. But through doing a lot of this work, grounding my system, raising awareness, I can recognize that anger, that energy hitting my system, catch it as soon as I can by dropping into my own felt sense, allowing the energy to process through me, and I'm able to maintain my ground. Because really, I was just listening to another podcast on this with Gabor Mate. You know, like exactly what you just said, children can get so restricted because, you know, parents are in their own patterns. They're saying that certain behavior is not right, certain behavior is right. As we've got to mold the child to a certain extent. But if we're saying, like, for example, anger is not acceptable, then the child will learn to repress that anger, and it just gets stuck in the system. It creates a trauma. Whereas if you've got a child, for example, who is displaying a lot of anger, and you're allowing that anger to flow through you, not get stuck in your own system, and maintain your ground, you're essentially holding space for her, even though she's not aware of it, then she doesn't get that conditioning that anger is unacceptable. You know, she's able to kind of, you know, display that anger. And I'm sure as she gets older, she will learn herself how to manage that energy in a healthy way. But for the time being, you know, it's a teaching for me and able to manage this energy for myself, and not pass on any unnecessary conditioning or trauma onto her. So it's a great teaching, actually. Something that I think everybody should really investigate, you know, for the benefit of not passing down our own parts and traumas onto our kids.
Very difficult. Very difficult. It's like
very
you said,
difficult.
Unintentional.
It's going to be an element of that. There is going to be an element of that, always.
Yeah, and that's also something we work on a lot, right? In the work we do is actually, you know, when you become aware of like a part or something, you know, like a pattern that you have, is actually like just sort of imagining that there is some little boy or little girl inside you that was formed at the time when this experience happened, which, you know, it can sometimes be that these things have happened more recently in adult life, but actually a lot of traumas really have some sort of seed in childhood, because they're before in childhood. You don't really have the ability to regulate your own energetic system. You rely on your parents to do that for you, and almost inevitably in that situation, unless your parents have, you know, been completely grounded and never had any trauma themselves, they're going to unintentionally pass some of that onto you. And so that's the sort of lineage of these sort of lifetimes of shared patterns that we have as a society.
Yeah. I mean, I've certainly got those parts, and there are times where I don't catch it as quickly as I'd like to. You know, but I can almost hear that angry voice come up at times. You know, it wants to fight back, and it's just about catching it as soon as you can, and being compassionate and forgiving with yourself. You know, you're only a human being, as you said. You didn't grow up this work. It's only in the last few years that I've really gone deep into this work. Before that, I was very much living from my parts, but we do the best we can. You know, that's why I kind of try and spread this work as much as possible to help. You know, if we could find our ground as a species, imagine that. You know, I know certain cultures are much better at it than others, but that seems to be the major problem in the West for me, is that nobody's got any ground. Nobody's been taught how to do this work, and thankfully it is coming back into popular consciousness now.
Yeah, that's it, right? So it makes, you know, the fact that we're sort of one of the most technologically advanced civilizations ever recorded, and whether it's a case of just that people are discovering it more, or whether there truly is, it seems that, you know, there's a rise in depression, and you know, we've kind of hit the limits of how hard we can work as people. You know, there's not really many more hours in the day for some people working in like the corporate environment to really squeeze out, and you know, you have to start to question, is there a way we can be more efficient without just throwing time and effort at a problem? You know, how can we actually use less time and resources and mental resources, and spend more time looking after our own needs, and actually get more, which is almost been made like a dirty idea in the Western world, is you know, sort of wanting to spend time doing your own things and not to have to give back to society. And be a upstanding citizen and contribute somehow through basically working in a job for some big company that is just pushing some corporate agenda and
doesn't really care about you,
adding that much value to everyday people.
Yeah, so true, isn't it? It's I think things have changed. Things are definitely changing. Our consciousness is rising. And that's something that came to me. I know we'll let you go in a minute, Luke. So things go on today. But just this last thing that came to me then, with my work that I'm doing now, growing this business, a lot of the time is a balance between the doing. There's some doing involved, and balancing that with the being work that we just talked about. So often, if I'm coming from a place of feeling under-resourced or lacking my system, most of the day I'm sat in meditation, either on my own with others, and that's been quite challenging for my wife. She'd come in and she'd see me in the day just kind of sat there with my eyes closed, and she'd be like, "Have you not got anything you're supposed to be doing today?" And so she'll suggest things I can do around the house. But it's been a saying to her, this is my work, this is my business. This inner work of feeling through my own discomfort or traumas or whatever's there is important as me sending out an email or sitting on a client call, whatever, or discovery call, whatever it might be. Because if I'm working from a place of under resource, lack, frustration in my system, and I put that into the business in some way, I'm just going to get that back in the results. I'm going to get low energy results if I'm acting from a low energy place. Whereas if I only work from a place of high energy, feeling abundant, feeling resource, well-being, then that's going to be reflected back to me in whatever I put that energy into. And that's because, like you say, most people are just focused on the doing. The idea of just sat there doing nothing and being is wasting time. But what happens is that you just are working from an under-resourced place, so the results you're getting back are just going to be exactly the same. So essentially, just like a hamster on a wheel, as I describe it. You put a lot of effort in, but going absolutely nowhere.
Definitely. That's been my experience as well. In the last year, I set up a IT consultancy business, but I wasn't even a programmer 2 years ago. So go figure. It's not really possible for me to brute force problems because I don't have the experience and background, to draw off. And I'm working as a I have to create a solution and execute it myself without really any particular outside support. And so I generally find that when I come up against something new that I haven't seen before, which is most of the time because I don't have the years of experience that a person who maybe had come through the traditional route into this job would have, the more I sit there staring at the problem, the more it actually kicks up my anxiety and my parts and actually prevents me from seeing the solution. And often the sort of the best first foot to put forward comes to me when I'm either in meditation or out exercising and just relaxing and allowing my system to down regulate. Not coming from this hyped up stressful, oh my god, I need to do this because I promised them that I would do it, and if I don't do it then it's going to make me look stupid, and people are going to say that I was wrong for thinking, being so arrogant as to think that I could do something which I have no experience in. That's everything really is always kicking you up into high levels of stress and anxiety, and we're not very good at down regulating and actually taking time to slow down and be present and breathe and just be aware of what is actually happening in our body, in our system, as we go from all these sort of things in our life.
The ability to down regulate your nervous system, absolutely huge, and probably the biggest benefit of this work for me, because that will benefit every aspect of your life if you can do that, whatever you're working on, whatever you're focused on at the moment.
Even if you don't believe all the other, slightly more what we'd call woo-woo, esoteric sort of benefits that we talk about. That's when, if you ever read anything about meditation, there's been so many scientific studies linking, short periods of 5-10 minutes of meditation every day consistently with, huge improvements in reported levels of welfare. So not necessarily, that there are objective things they measure as well, but quite often it's the people say that they feel better, and that's subjective, right?
That's felt, can only be a felt experience.
But what could be better than having a better subjective experience, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's what
I'd
it's all
rather have a
about.
better subjective experience than an objective experience. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Luke, thank you, mate. Incredible knowledge as always. I'm sure anyone who's watching the replay later will appreciate that. So I'll let you go. Let you get back to what doing you have to do today.
Yeah.
I'm sure you balance it as well. But enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you next time.